So I'm going to start. Hello, friends. I am Ade Ferro, Director of Partnerships at Latino Victory and the Executive Director of the Venezuelan American Caucus. And this is Latino Victory Live. Today, it's all it is all about the SCOTUS decision uh, published yesterday by the Supreme Court of the United States. A painful, disheartening, outrageous decision, but it is what it is, and here we are. I want to let the people that is going to join this live that if you have any comments or questions, please leave it in the comment section and we will review it at the end of the live. So let's talk about what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court. Yesterday, June 23rd, 2025, the Supreme Court of the United States made a pivotal and alarming decision, one that changes due process for immigrants and shifts the balance of power between the judiciary and the executive branch. The conservative majority ruled to pause a lower court order, giving the Trump administration the green light to resume deporting immigrants to third countries without, and this is a very important part, without the 15-day notice. Only 15 days. And without the chance to challenge their removal under the Convention Against Torture. I will tell you more about the Convention Against Torture. Let's be clear. This ruling lets the administration deport people right now while legal challenges are still going in the courts. This affects thousands of immigrants, including those deported to South Sudan already, where violence, kidnappings, and torture are daily realities. Others sent to El Salvador, where they are imprisoned, with the U.S. actually paying up to $50 million for their detention to Bukele's government in El Salvador. The case of one man deported to Guatemala who is gay faced death threats and had to go into hiding after being wrongfully removed from the United States. And let's not forget the case of 238 Venezuelans sent to El Salvador's SECOT prison, which is nothing more than a gulag. More than 90% of them have no criminal record in the US or any other country. That was confirmed by the government during court proceedings. In fact, more than half of them never even left ICE detention centers after arriving in the US. The only reason they were flagged? Because they had tattoos, because they're tattoos. They never set foot on the streets. So, how could they have committed any crimes? Also, and this is not a surprise, the government had to admit in court that there is no real evidence connecting them to the Tren de Aragua gang. And as of today, not a single family has been able to contact any of them. They are completely isolated, essentially kidnapped with no hope of release. As a matter of fact, we are still waiting for the official list of people sent to El Salvador. The Trump administration, as it is right now, have not published it just yet. All of this was made possible by the U.S. government. All of this barbaric situation was made possible by the US government. And let's name names. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And here's the irony. Rubio is the grandson of an undocumented immigrant. His maternal grandfather, Pedro Victor Garcia, who was detained and ordered deported in 1962 for re entering the US without a visa. He lived undocumented until gaining legal status under the brand new, back then, Cuban Adjustment Act of 1966. So there is that. Back to the SCOTUS decision. Let's go back to the SCOTUS decision. This ruling undermines federal law and international treaties like the Convention Against Torture, which bars deporting people to places where they are likely to be tortured. It prioritizes enforcement over due process and sends a clear message: immigrants' lives are disposable. This case, the one that ended up being in front of SCOTUS, came from a group of men from Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Cuba, and Mexico, scheduled for deportation to South Sudan. A lower court had tried to protect them. In April, the District Court of Massachusetts said, give them 15 days' notice and conduct a credible fear interview in their native language. That's the minimum required by law, people. But the Supreme Court overruled that with no hearing and no explanation. In a brief, unsigned order, they sided with the Trump administration. Justice Sotomayor dissented, accusing the court of rewarding lawlessness, reminding us that some of these deportations had already happened with less than 24 hours' notice in violation of the court orders. Secretary Marcos Rubio's response, you want to know it? He said, and I quote, the further away we send them, the better, so they cannot come back. End the quote. This isn't about law. It is about punishment. It is about racism. It is about hate. Beyond this abomination, there is a real impact, a human impact. This ruling eliminates safeguards. No more advance warning, no more time to raise objections, even if you are being sent to a completely unfamiliar country. Did you know that some deportees are currently stranded in Djibouti, a country they have never been to, facing heat exposure, malaria, and other diseases, and toxic air from burn pits? The administration goal: 1 million deportations per year, even if that means sending people to third countries that don't want them, don't know them, and where they could be harmed or even killed. Let's break this down even further. This is what deportation to third countries really looks like. We were talking about South Sudan. In South Sudan, war, torture, kidnappings, violence, even the US tell Americans not to go there, as they tell Americans not to go to Venezuela too, for example. In El Salvador, and we have talked about El Salvador already, but and I repeat, Venezuelans with no criminal records locked up in a mega prison. The US is paying millions to make it happen. It doesn't matter if they are innocents or not. Guatemala, where LGBTQ plus people face real threats. One man deported by mistake had to go into hiding. Panama and Costa Rica. A few deportees get a chance to start over, but they are the rare exceptions. This is not just about immigration enforcement. It is about real people being sent into real danger, sometimes to places they have never even seen. There are so many legal and ethical red flags around this issue. The US is bound by the Convention Against Torture ratified in 1984, which clearly prohibits deportations where people might face torture. But this administration has ignored that. Recent DHS policies show people were deported with as little as 15 minutes notice. 15 minutes notice that they were going to be deported, often without a chance, obviously, to even make their case in front of a judge. Legal experts from Human Rights First to the National Immigration Litigation Alliance have says have said that this process is intentionally punitive. And let me be absolutely clear. Even immigrants with criminal records are supposed to be given due process. Let me repeat that. Even immigrants with criminal records are supposed to be given due process. That's the law, and this is America. Where are we going with all of this? This policy also threatens U.S. credibility abroad and may deepen humanitarian crises in several countries. Domestically, it could create massive labor shortages in industries that rely on immigrant workers. Now, if you are asking yourself, are there any implications for U.S. citizens? The decision itself applies to non citizens, as U.S. citizens cannot be deported. However, our concern is whether this ruling, combined with the administration's broader actions, could indirectly affect citizens who oppose the government, potentially leading to targeting. To address this, you must examine the administration history of targeting political opponents and the potential for government overreach. Research suggests that the decision by reducing due process for immigrants could set a precedent for eroding civil liberties, potentially affecting citizens to increase government power. It seems likely that the administration actions, such as threats of prosecution and use of federal law enforcement, could extend the citizens' critical could be extended to citizens critical of the government. For example, an NPR investigation found that since 2022, Trump has repeatedly threatened to investigate, prosecute, jail, or otherwise punish his political opponents, rivals, and even private citizens. The evidence leans toward increasing risk for citizens opposing the government with controversy around the extent of potential targeting. There have been instances where the administration has targeted law firms, universities, and activists has been all over the news, including revoking security clearances for attorneys at Covington and Berlin, for example, and Perkins Coie, firms that represented positions adverse to Trump. These actions have been described as authoritarian and contributing to democratic backsliding, negatively impacting free speech and the rule of law. While deportation is not applicable to U.S. citizens, other, other forms of targeting are definitely possible. The administration has been accused of using federal law enforcement to target ICE detaining to target protesters and activists. Uh, as seen in reports of ICE detaining U.S. citizens mistakenly, including cases in Arizona and Florida this month. We have seen all over the news that the same way they are detaining immigrants or who they believe because the profiling, because something very peculiar. You haven't seen that they are detaining white people. It's always brown people, immigrants, people of color. And many other times, because of that profiling, they have been detaining U.S. citizens too. And as I said, has happened in California, in Arizona, and Florida just this past month. Additionally, the administration use of executive orders, such as those restricting voting rights and targeting DEI programs, could indirectly affect citizens who oppose these policies. Think about that. Citizens have constitutional protections, including freedom of speech, due process, and protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. However, the current political climate, with the administration rhetoric and actions, suggests these protections could be at risk. For instance, Trump has vowed to investigate or prosecute figures like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and Liz Cheney, indicating a willingness to use government power against political opponents. The decision raises legal concerns about compliance with constitutional protections for citizens, particularly in the context of government overreach. Ethically, ethically targeting citizens for political opposition undermines democratic principles and the rule of law. The ACLU and other organizations have highlighted the administration actions as threats to civil liberties, emphasizing the need for vigilance and legal challenges. The policy could strain civil society with potential impacts on free speech and political participation. For example, reports of federal intervention in local protests, even when not requested by local authorities, suggest a willingness to use government power against dissent. This could discourage citizens from opposing the government, affecting democratic engagement. This Supreme Court decision on from yesterday, June 23, 2025, does not directly apply to US citizens, but the broader actions of the Trump administration pose risks to civil liberties, including for citizens who oppose the government. Research suggests increased risk of targeting through legal harassment, surveillance, and other retaliatory actions, with controversy around this extent. So, where we are today, after yesterday's decision, today the Trump administration just filed a clarification. They argued that Judge Brian Murphy's original injunction requiring 15 days notice and credible fear interviews was an overreach that hindered immigration enforcement. Think about that. The administration labeled him as an activist judge, claiming his order interfered with their ability to remove dangerous immigrants and negotiate with other countries. They said his ruling wreaks havoc on national security and described it as an obstacle to dealing with what they call a crisis of illegal immigration. DHS went so far as to celebrate the Supreme Court state as a win, stating, "Fire up the deportation planes." The White House framed the judge action as judicial overreach, with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying that a single judge in a single city cannot direct the movements of an aircraft carrier. The administration attempt to downplay legal protections and sideline judicial oversight in favor of fast-track deportation raises serious ethical and constitutional concerns. At its core, this clash reflects a deeper struggle between executive power and the rule of law. And the cost, ultimately, is paid by the vulnerable lives caught in the middle, human lives. So, in short, the Trump administration wants speed, control, and no interference, even if that means deporting people to places where they might face violence, prison, or death. Putting all I have said before in few words. The Supreme Court's ruling marks a dangerous and unprecedented shift toward an immigration system that is punitive, rushed, and deeply reckless. It strips away essential legal protections, disregards fundamental human rights, and puts innocent lives in danger, all to serve a political agenda. Make no mistake, this decision will go down as indelible, dark, and shameful stain on the history of this country. Also, let's not forget, while the Supreme Court decision shocked the country, the so called big, beautiful bill continues advancing and becoming a growing threat to the lives and safety of millions of Americans. At the same time, we still don't know whether the U.S. attacks destroyed the Fordo facility in Iran or eliminated Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium. And if they didn't, if the attack failed to neutralize the nuclear threat, as apparently it chose, then we deserve to know why the president chose to put our troops in the region at risk and why he endangered Americans here at home, all for a strike that may have accomplished almost nothing. There is also supposedly a truce between Israel and Iran, but no one knows if it is real or just another political performance. We have a president whose irresponsibility and narcissism border on madness, now using vulgar language in public interviews like he did this morning without consequence. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security and Florida's fascist state government are moving forward with plans to build an immigration detention center surrounded by alligators in the Everglades. Here, I am in Florida. Thousands of families continue to be separated every single day. The National Guard remains deployed in U.S. cities, not for natural disasters, but to confront American citizens. Masked agents, or should we say mercenaries, without identification, continue abducting immigrant workers in broad daylight, and along the way, even U.S. citizens are being beaten and arrested. Fake ICE agents are terrorizing people and committing crimes, but since we cannot identify them, we don't know who is who. A woman who had lived and worked in Tennessee for many years, 5 months pregnant, lost her child after ICE agents repeatedly ignored her urgent request for prenatal care while she was held in detention. She was detained for more than a month, forced to sleep on the floor of a cell, and given food, and this is real, infested by cockroaches. That's on the report. She reported severe stomach pain, but was told it was normal. She ended up delivering her stillborn baby on the floor with 2 guards present, her feet shackled. Afterward, she was not allowed to call her fiancé or speak to anyone for 2 days. She grieved in silence, completely alone, and not long after, ICE deported her to Guatemala. Also, an American far right extremist recently shot and killed a state elected official and her husband in Minnesota, leaving another state elected official and his wife seriously wounded. This is not a warning of what could come. It is the America we are living in right now. The America the majority of us do not recognize. It is imperative to remain vigilant, support civil rights organizations and immigrants organizations as much as you can, and engage in democratic processes to protect liberties and hold the government accountable. There is a way to overcome this nightmare, and it is by standing united, firmly united, all of us. We will get through this and we will come out stronger. I am sure of that. But we cannot expect others to do the work. Each of us must do our part in whatever way we can. Please consider donate to Latino Victory or to the Venezuelan American Caucus. We will post the links to donate. And so I leave you with this. If we truly believe in justice, in human rights, in democracy, in the rule of law, and in the dignity of every single human being, we cannot stay silent. We must hold the line, you guys. And the time to do it is now. Thank you so much for watching and for believing in the power of the people. Please feel free to share this video and to comment. And thank you so much for being here.